anyway, so that will help me kind of understand like where to start, which is, do you currently have a podcast? Have you had one in the past? How did it go? What's the intention? All of the things. So let's start there. Is anyone currently doing a podcast? Does anyone currently have one? Sylvia, you have one? Anyone else? Everyone else?
I do not.
You do not? Does anyone, are you considering having one?
I have been interested in guest, being guest on podcasts and working that angle, but I don't have the capacity, or at least I haven't thought to do that right now.
Yeah, definitely time consuming for many reasons, and can, and I'm happy to talk through some of that as well. Kingston 1967 $. Can you tell us who you are?
It's Donovan.
Donovan! Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm actually in the barber shop.
That's all good.
So that's why I didn't put video on, but I'm to listen in at least,
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I just wanted to make sure that we have, our speakers in here and not just some like random people. So I just wanted to double check. Yeah, I mean, okay, so podcasting in a time, and I understand your comment, Jessica, and certainly, you have to have the capacity and the resources to do it. Sylvia, how long have you been doing your podcast?
So I started doing it on Clubhouse about a year ago.
Yep.
I'm for me, Clubhouse is a stepping stone. I have all the equipment, so there's no reason why I can't do video. So I'm launching video, and I'm going to re-interview some of the people that I've already interviewed in the past, because, well, two of them are movie stars. So what the hey, right? Let's just do it while we got while they still talk to me. Let's get them.
Yeah.
The star of Critter Fixers, Vernon Hodges, is a good friend of mine, and he's agreed to his second show. And then Mark McCullough, who's a movie star, he's agreed to do it. He's my actual speaking coach until you came along.
Yep. Awesome. Love it. So what's your intention? I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here, but what's your intention of your podcast? Like, what are your goals of the podcast?
Well, first, I just want to get them back on there so that I can launch in a different venue, because I'm Clubhouse, and I paid for Buzzsprout, so it goes everywhere. You can type in those people's names and my name, and my podcast will come up, but it's not visual, it's only audio. So I want to jumpstart into the visual world, and then take it from there, whichever direction I need to, for my book, for my training, for Maxwell, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So
whatever you tell me to do, Amy. Okay.
No. No. There's different goals, right? Depending on how you look at it. I'll tell you kind of my journey that I took in podcasting and how it helped me land speaking engagements. I mean, that's what we're here to talk about today, of course. But just maybe like a different way to think about it. But it just because that is the way that was my path doesn't mean it's everyone's path. So I think that there are different purposes, different reasons of having a podcast. I have had in my lifetime probably 7 podcasts that I've done. Some have lasted longer than others. Some have been more successful than others. And, each one of them kind of had its own meaning behind it and had its own purpose behind it. And so when I started down a different kind of mindset shift on podcasting, it really changed a lot of things for me. And then that's when I really figured out, and I thought, I wonder if I can use this to get speaking engagements. And so then that's what I did. And then I started down that world. And then I was like, oh my gosh, yes, you can. Like, this is great, So I'm going to show you and teach you guys some of the things to think about if this is, an avenue that you want to explore. Podcasting is time. You know, you gotta, especially in what I'm gonna show you with interviewing folks, you know, that takes time, to do that. There's like some really cool things that you can do that doesn't take as much time. Like what I learned was to just batch my time and to do interviews back to back to back to back to back, and then just give those to my producer, and then he just did it, you know, did his thing, as opposed to doing like one a week or two or three, like spread out through the week, because it's definitely like a brain shift, and I'm a huge productivity nerd. And so, and it's why I guess in life I've been able to do a lot of things, is just because I'm always constantly thinking about like, how can I maximize my time? How can I do more in the same amount of time? And so batching is definitely a way to do that with podcasting. So I just said, I'm on Fridays from this time to this time is when I'm going to do my interviews. And I was able to, at one point when I had Unlocking Happiness, which is a different podcast, and I'll walk through some of this with you, but just giving you some context here. When I had Unlocking Happiness, which was probably my most successful, longest running show, which we will go back to it when I have the resources and capacity, as Jessica was saying earlier. But anyway, I was able to push out maybe in 2 months' time, 1.5 years worth of episodes. So I just had so many guests lined up that I was able to batch my time, and then I just sent them off to be produced, and then let them kind of drip out throughout the rest of the 1.5 years, which was awesome. The challenge with that is I took 1.5 years off, and then during that 1.5 years, I started all these other things, authority speakers being one of them. But and then it's hard to kind of get back in the rhythm, right? So, but you can do that. So I want to kind of show you some of that. And what you might not know, I've told the story sometimes, but I don't tell it all the time. Authority Speakers actually started because of a podcast, and it started because of Unlocking Happiness. And it was this whole mindset shift that I had that was really brought on by Josh Elledge through Up My Influence. And I had been working with, I think I was actually on his podcast initially, and then just kind of stayed in touch with him, and then had done some things with him. And then he went down this whole like podcast world, and he gave me the idea to look at podcasts differently, which is typically when we looked at podcasts, or how I traditionally looked at podcasting, was I was going to have my show. It was for visibility. It was to establish myself as an expert, you know, all the things that you hear, and all that is awesome and wonderful and can totally work. At this point, when I met Josh, I was probably on my 4th or 5th show. And I loved podcasting, and I just couldn't get the like momentum and see any like results, like ROI from it that was meaningful enough to keep going at this point, right? So when I met him, I was, it's not a pitch for Josh, although I'm happy to introduce you to him if you want. But when I met Josh, I was really doing, let me move, I've got a couple screens here. Let me get this set. I was really working on Unlocking Happiness, and it was really kind of going a bit crazy at that point. We were really dialed in. Give me 1 second. Show you, let's do this. I'd like to think that I can multitask, but really I can't. Okay, there we go. Okay, so anyway, so I was rocking and rolling on Unlocking Happiness and doing some great shows there. This is my brand, Choose Happy. This is kind of where it all started. And so I was really interviewing some great people. This is Unlocking Happiness, see if it loads here. Was interviewing some great people, mostly authors. This is Unlocking Happiness. And really just pulling out their stories, right? Like my whole platform and everything is all on happiness and living life and positivity and all the fun things. So it was really great. And I got to talk to some amazing, amazing guests, like truly just incredible. And what I started to realize in that is the relationship just kind of seemed to like fizzle once I had like these great conversations with people. And then that was kind of like it, right? And you get to know them, especially on the show that I was doing. You get to know these folks on a very intimate level. Like they are pouring their heart, their soul, their story. They're giving it all to you. And so eventually Unlocking Happiness then kind of rolled into just speaking to authors. And then from there, as I was talking to these amazing guests afterwards, I was just like, what else are you doing besides podcasting? And, you know, most of them said like that they are trying to get out there, like they're trying to get more speaking. And at the time I was speaking all the time, right? So I was going crazy speaking. So I was just talking to them, giving people advice. And that's really our first 2 clients came from Unlocking Happiness, from the show. That was just a simple conversation afterwards that was like, I can help you, you know, like they would ask and I would give advice and then they say, well, can you just do this? And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, like I can help you. And that's how it all started. So a little unknown fact about Authority Speakers Agency, but then of course, some of you know, I teamed up with Rob and then it really became Authority Speakers Agency, but it really all started under the Choose Happy brand. So I met Josh in the middle of that. And then we started together Happiest Places to Work. Now, here was the whole concept of Happiest Places to Work. And this is where everything shifted for me. Unlocking Happiness got to this point, but when we started Happiest Places to Work, this is where I actually came up with the idea. Was I really, at the time, I was speaking on a lot of stages, like association stages, motivational type stages, and I wanted to get into corporate America. I just wanted to speak to companies. I wasn't really doing that at that point. Motivational speaking is great. And it's a lot of like one and done kind of speaking. And I wanted to be able to go into and speak with companies and then have like a back end, you know, have some sort of coaching program or work with them for a program that we had called Happy Places to Work. So it was almost like my lead source. That's how I looked at it, right? And that's what Josh really taught me, was that this is almost like your lead source. So that's what we did. We started Happiest Places to Work. I started talking to these amazing companies. I interviewed some incredible people, like incredible. Still to this day, I'm like, I don't know, like that was so amazing. I don't feel worthy of that interview, but some pretty well-known people, and it was really great experience. And so it was really simply just that. You have this conversation with these guests, and then afterwards you just start kind of asking them questions, right? And seeing if there is an opportunity for you to continue working together. So it was really this shift from, okay, I'm going to have a podcast for me, for my brand, for my exposure, for my visibility, for my whatever, to I'm going to have a podcast for them to help the guests spread their message, to help the guests promote whatever it is that they're promoting, to help the guests brag on their employees, you know, or their happy places to work. And so it really became like a service model for other people and I'm not saying instead of a selfish model for me, not saying that it's actually selfish to have a podcast for yourself, by the way. That's just what came out of my mouth. A little alliteration there, service versus selfish. So anyway, so that was the point of it. And then I started booking speaking engagements from that. And the cool thing with Happiest Places to Work, you know, I was talking to owners and CEOs, in some cases HR managers, but most of the time presidents and CEOs, is, you know, you're really talking to like the decision makers, and you get to have these really high level conversations, which is just, in my business brain, is amazing. I could just talk business to people all day long. So if you think about what it is that you speak on and who you want to reach, it's again, less about building a podcast for your brand, and think about like, how can you build a podcast for that sector, right? So how can you build a podcast for that audience? So you might speak to educators. How can you build a podcast for educators and have it be this place where you celebrate your guests, right? You celebrate educators, you celebrate their messages, you celebrate their struggles, you celebrate them getting out whatever that they want to get out, you celebrate them bragging on their school or whatever it is, right? So think about like who your audience is and then build your podcast around that. And then it's a simple conversation once your interview is done, right? To just say, I have like, and I never sold anyone after a conversation. That was not the intention. It was just like, I've got some ideas for you. Like based on some of the things that you said during the show, I think, we could potentially work together. Would love to set up a time to chat further, because you're not going to have an hour to speak after the podcast. So, and then if they want to, it's just an easy invite, then they'll set up another call for you. This worked actually so well with Happiest Places to Work and booking events that I actually started then the Happy Event Planner Show. And we're actually revamping this show now for you all, for our speakers, so that we continue to have these relationships with event planners. But at the time, the Happy Event Planner Show was set up very similar to Happiest Places to Work. So just like I wanted to talk to CEOs and presidents about building and cultivating a happy workplace, I also wanted to talk to event planners, right, about their events and see how I may be a solution for them in speaking. And the great thing is like, by the end of the show, they love you. You just asked them a million like brilliant questions, right? They love you. If they were in the room with you, they would give you a darn hug. But they're not, so they give you virtual hugs, right? Or virtual high fives. So the conversation is really easy and it's very fluid to just have those conversations, and not everyone either can or is interested or has an event, coming up or whatever. And I'm not saying you have to target event, but I'm just saying this is for this particular show, what I was doing. And just like with the CEOs, right? Not every CEO was looking to bring in somebody to talk about this for whatever reason or another, or they're going to look at it in maybe a year. So, it's a relationship that you have to build over time. But it does work when you start thinking of it really differently. And then we continue to serve them well beyond our conversation, with promotion of social media, just giving them, for unlocking happiness. We've got hundreds at this point, what we call happy mic moments. So we would produce happy mic moments. We would be able to give that to them. They can use it in any way that they want. Happiest Places to Work, we did a lot of really cool things and giving like certificates to folks, and like in recognizing that they were on Happiest Places to Work, that they were a part of a happy workplace. And people love to brag about that, like CEOs, presidents, they love to say that they were on the Happiest Places to Work podcast, because that makes their workplace look like they're doing amazing things, right? So it's just, you keep thinking, like keep pulling the strings in your brain to thinking about like who your audience is, so that you can serve them through your own podcast, as opposed to serving yourself and your own brand. You're really serving those who you can serve, right? Like who you're trying to serve right now with your message. So that was kind of the shift. I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen. You don't need to stare at my website this whole time, right? So that was some of the work that I did on the podcast side in doing things a little differently. Questions so far?
I have a question and comment.
Yeah. Hi.
So I was thinking, hi, I'm Jessica. It's nice to meet you.
You too.
I'm a production machine, so it's not that I don't have the capacity. Or I would honestly, if I was to be honest, I would have said, I don't want to do a podcast, because I'm more of a visionary kind of talker, and my how-to is in my book. My how-to is in my coaching sessions. so I was thinking if I get into a podcast, it's me teaching. So I like this actually, and I'm wondering who would be the potential guest for a podcast. So I'm a relationship coach, have a therapist hat as well. So I was thinking my message is about partners owning their shit. And so maybe it's kind of those individual coaches who are talking about your happiness is by owning your own stuff, kind of guest people. Does that make sense?
Yep, yes, and so let me ask some questions, because I want to roll
Yeah.
with it for a moment.
Yeah.
So are you trying to, so I think you're in a unique position where you're thinking of the audience being the audience who, let's just say for a speaking event, I'm just going to throw out like a big, huge conference, whatever that looks like to you, right? So whatever that conference looks like to you. It sounds like to me like you're speaking to the audience, the butts and seats audience, who you
Yeah.
can serve, right?
Yes.
That's one way to do it. The other is to think about who are those people who hire you to speak to the butts and seats folks. It doesn't just have to be event planners, by the way. I know that that's like a really easy one to just come to, but not necessarily for all of you. So like who's putting on those events for people who need that relationship work?
That's a great question. That's why I am in Authority Speakers.
And that is what I'm trying to help you to get to, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it could, I might be wrong. So totally good if I am, by the way.
Yeah.
It may even be like your verticals. Like it may even be like people who also serve that audience, and do similar things than as what you do. It could, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, forgive me. It could also be, I often say, genius ideas lie inside rabbit holes. Anyway, it also might be like suppliers and vendors who service that world and that industry too, because they have a vested interest in that for whatever reason. So you might also think along those lines too.
Those are the two that I was thinking, individual coaches, because they serve the same people. I guess other relationship coaches, but I don't know if that's would be effective. This is why I haven't done podcasting.
What about like like there's like, I think of it's called Quinza. I think it's called Quinza from my memory. And it's from positivepsychology.com.
Mhm.
The reason I know this is because I was in this world for so long. Anyway, so like something like that, like positive psychology, they obviously are serving this industry, but they're serving all the individual coaches. But they have an interest in their software because they want those people to use that software. So this is another rabbit hole and probably a little advanced, so forgive me, but they almost could be a sponsor for your show.
Okay.
No, so and they may be somebody that you can talk to as well. I don't know, like if they have an event, positivepsychology.com or whatever that I think it is. If they have an event every year, like that would be great. Like get them on your show, right? Because now you get to have a little conversation with them and now you build that relationship with them. But that's one person, right? Or that's one.
Yeah.
Like what's the umbrella that the show is about?
Yeah. Getting the tools out there. So people that have tools that our clients, shared clients could use. So that, or like some other platform like that. So I think I do understand what you're saying.
Awesome. Yeah.
Amy, I have a tip for Jessica.
Hi, Super Dave. Yeah. Nice to see you.
So I hopped on this call because I have a podcast and I've been using it to do like reverse scouting of not my competition, but fellow speakers so I'm in a very unique space. It's the first responder space, right? And I have other speakers onto my show. And then sometimes I get them to talk about like some conferences that they've been at. And like I build relationships with them and I try to get like the information for like who hired them.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's awesome. The
that's-
speak,
I was
yeah,
gonna say that's one way that I've done like some research on what they've talked about, but I've also had people on the show, like I'm trying to find people that would hire them also. So, but for now, I've been doing other podcasters who have shows or who are also speakers and have like gone on tours, like, you know, bigger than me.
I mean, there's another avenue, right? So well, you just kind of said two things, Dave. One
Yep.
is having those speaker and then, you know, having those conversations. And what I was going to say about that is like, nobody refers speakers more than other speakers, right? So like when we can all stop looking at the next person on stage as a competition and start looking at them as friends, like it changes your speaking world. Not saying anyone here does, but I do see that sometimes. So that's one. So I love what you said, and you said something else, and I don't know if you intended to say it, but instead of we're talking about having our own podcast, but if you were a guest on somebody else's podcast, like Jessica was saying, has been guests on other people's podcasts, is to find those other speakers that have spoken at events that you want to speak at, just so you can open up that conversation with them. So,
yes, I was also going to suggest that to Jessica as well, that if she looks at other podcasts that she would potentially go on and just kind of go through their guest and see if any of them are similar to like have a similar topic, try and connect with them.
yeah,
Either LinkedIn or Instagram.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are on top of tips.
Mhm. Yeah, great.
So yeah, I love that. So noodle with that, Jessica. Let me know what you come up with, or if you
Will
want
do.
to brainstorm in your backstage on Mighty Networks. Happy to do that.
Great,
So,
thanks.
yeah. Okay, other questions on like how to think about that differently or any of that. You know, you don't have to do a podcast either. This just came to me when Jessica was talking a little bit. You know, it doesn't have to be like a formal podcast that's on Spotify, Apple, da, 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 da. When we started Happy Event Planner, like we started it out, like I didn't have at the time, like I didn't want to put any financial resources into it because I didn't have it like kind of planned ROI out, if you will, yet. Like I hadn't really seen any ROI from it yet. So when we first started, it just started as a YouTube show. That's it. Like, as long as you have a YouTube channel, you can go live on YouTube and you can, you know, start it just as simple as that, right? Or you could just have a show that you put up the recording on your page later. Like if all the podcasting stuff is overwhelming to you, the good news is when you start thinking of it differently, it's less about like how many downloads you have and who all listens to it. And it's more about just having these really cool, genuine, authentic relationships, and then giving the guests things that they can use and need, you know, beyond the show. So that it's, because then it becomes less important to them too about how many downloads and how many listeners, when you're really truly like serving them and giving them like really cool assets that they can use. So anyway, another rabbit hole. Other questions on how we did that? Okay, I had podcasting on my brain this morning. I was like, what am I going to talk about? I have a whole, like, I call it my brain dump list. I have a whole brain dump list for y'all every Wednesday. And then we grab some topics that some of you have submitted. And so I'm always like, which one today? And I had podcasting on the brain just because we're revamping the Happy Event Planner show for under the Authority Speakers brand. So I thought, you know what? I had a lot of success doing that. And I'm not sure that I talk about it enough because it is just a different way of thinking of podcasting. So, all right. Well, thank y'all. By the way, Erica has open office hours on Tuesdays at 3 as well. So you may have seen that yesterday. She'll get the calendar events put in Mighty Networks so that you can RSVP to them. You don't have to go to, you don't have to go to anything you don't want, but life is a choice. But if you have like questions on, or if you feel stuck, or you have questions on any of like the stages or any of the strategy type stuff, go ahead and attend office hours on Tuesdays. You can just pop in, ask your question, pop out. Somebody posted the other day, they stayed for all the speaker questions because they thought they were so good. So that's awesome. So that's really just there for you to utilize that and to be able to communicate with Erica as well. So thank you all. We love and appreciate you. We do not take you lightly. Thank you for giving us the option to serve you. Happy Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your week. All right, see you guys. Bye.
See ya.
Team.